Hey everybody, John Foss, CW Twin Cities. Very excited to be talking with Emilio Estevez about his new film, The Public, which is in theaters right now. Tell us about the film.
This was a real labor of purpose. I've been on this movie for 12 years. This week marks 12 years, almost to the day that I started this. This evolved. It started with a newspaper article in the LA Times, written by a Salt Lake City librarian who talked about how libraries had become daytime de facto homeless shelters and how librarians were now first responders and de facto social workers. And I was moved by the piece, and I began to hang out at the downtown Central Library in LA and started to imagine a story and what it would look like if the patrons, on a particularly really cold night, which I know you guys experience, in fact, with this polar vortex just last month, it was brutal. So it's that same sort of weather descends on the city. Patrons are staging an action.
The library has not been sanctioned an official emergency shelter.
And the police obviously are called in to defuse it. Media is called in, and they start to spin it. And then a local politician enters into the mix, and he starts to spin the narrative for his own political gain. And so, of course, it all starts to fall apart.
We're a public library, not a shelter for the homeless.
Why do all this? For what?
Let them know that we still matter.
To work on a project that takes almost 20% of your life to do, obviously this is something you're very passionate about. Now that it's done, how do you feel about it, about the project being done, and what do you want? What kind of change do you want to see being made?
So we have taken the film now on a 30-city tour across the United States, down the coast, across the Midwest. We were in Minneapolis last month, screening at your local library, in the main library there. What we have experienced in these screenings, whether it's screening at a library or an ALA convention, or for homeless advocacy groups, or for at homeless shelters, is that this movie is about the poor, the marginalized, the outcast, the misfits, and they're seeing themselves on screen, and they're empowered by that. And so when I'm in an audience, again, full of librarians, it's like you're pumping fresh oxygen into the theater. It's a real fist pump for people who are in that profession and people who deal with the homeless issue on the daily.
And I've heard that you, in the past, have said that this could possibly be a TV series in the future. Is that still a plan?
Absolutely. That is something that I'm currently working on, turning this into a show.
Very cool. Well, the film looks great. I'm very excited to see it. When it comes to you and your dad and your brother, there's not really another trifecta that has been as successful as far as the family goes. What is that like? What's your relationship like with your dad and your brother? What's it like being so successful and having those relationships? Do you still have a great relationship with them?
Yeah, I mean, it's all about family. And my mom, my parents are from Ohio. My dad's from Dayton. My mom was born in Cincy and raised in Kentucky, and so they're from really good stock. And they have always maintained that family comes first. And my folks, they're together 58, 59 years now. My mom always said that if the family needed to stay together, to stay together. So we traveled, whether it was across the country or Europe or the Philippines for Apocalypse Now, we stayed together, and so we're a pretty tight unit. Obviously, it's all out there. When you have a family with these kind of moving pieces, it has a tendency to get a little nutty because, again, the press is out there. Historically documenting all of it, but it's we're all very close. And my dad, there he is, 79 years old. He's in his 6th season of Grace and Frankie with Lily Tomlin and Jane Fonda and Sam Waters. It's a great show, and he's thrilled to be still at it at his age.
When you started your career, you had mentioned that you had the opportunity to either change your name to Sheen or stick with your original name, and
That's
unlike
right.
your dad and brother, you stuck with the original.
Right.
Looking back, number one, why did you do that? Number two, do you feel like that was the right decision?
I do. When you look at the changing demographic in the United States, and you look at how many Hispanic surnames you're seeing, I mean, California alone has 53% Hispanic surnames. So I think in retrospect, I made the right decision. It certainly seems in fashion now. Back in '79 and '80, it was a little bit more of of a hurdle to get over. I think there were a lot of people in my business life who thought it would be a lot easier for me to choose a name and take the name Sheen, but it just didn't fit, and it wasn't who I was or am, and I also didn't want people to be thinking that I was just getting in the door because of his name. Oftentimes I would go in auditions and they wouldn't even know we were related.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so this next question is from one of our fans, Mitch Hall,
Okay.
and he asks about the Young Guns franchise was very successful. There's still a lot of fans out there.
Sure.
Some of the cast has said that they would be up for another sequel. Is that something that you would ever be a part of, and have you heard anything about that?
We all were killed at the end. I don't see how we would do that.
I'll make you famous.
There's a little gray area about whether or not Billy the Kid actually was killed by Pat Garrett in 1881, that he went on to live as another individual named Brushy Bill Roberts. Is there a possibility of mining that story? Perhaps. But for now, I mean, I don't see how those cast members could come back to life.
Buenos tardes, amigos.
You're not dead.
Do I look dead?
Unless there was some mystical aspect to the story included. So,
All right. Well, Emilio Estevez, it's an honor to talk with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Twin Cities, make sure you check out The Public. It's in theaters right now. Thanks, Emilio.
thank you. Thanks for having me.